Amy Waters is suing her neighbor Nelson Bauer in the amount of $15,000. She says the defendant's hoarding habits have hurt the value of her property. Mr. Bauer says his collection has nothing to do with the plaintiff, and she should mind her own business.
All rise. Remain standing and come to order. This court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Kevin Ross presiding.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated.
All parties have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Deputy Thomas. Ms. Waters, you want to sue Mr. Bauer here because of an inability to sell your house.
Yes.
To the tune of $15,000. Prove your case.
Okay, well, I've lived next door to Mr. Bauer's for about 7 years now.
Any problems during those 7 years?
No, he keeps to himself. We don't see him too much.
All right.
But his hoarding has increasingly become worse.
Why do you believe he's a hoarder?
I believe his house is so full that now he started on the porch. He has stacks and stacks of periodicals, books on his porch. Mm-hmm. At this point, you can only go up part of the stairway. And
it's blocking the entrance to the house?
He has another stairway, but it's blocking one of the, I have a picture.
All right. I'll see the picture, Mr. Bauer. Before I look at this picture, have you seen the picture?
No, I'd like to see it.
Every time, let Mr. Bauer see the picture that I'm getting ready to look at. Let him take a look at it first before I see it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Here's some paperwork from him.
All right. So while Mr. Bauer is looking at that picture, this is an appraisal of your property?
Yes, and the appraisal was at $275,000. So it's been on the market for over 15 months now.
All right.
And
Mr. Bauer, is that your house back, sir?
That's my house.
All right. Let's take a look at that on the plasma. So
that was taken when I filed the case. There are more now, more piles, and just the little part of the one stairway to get up.
All right. So if we look at the house, sir, what's the deal? Why do we have so many items on the outside?
I'm a librarian. My wife is a librarian. We have a large book collection. She passed away about 20 years ago, and my only connection really with her has been reading the books and dealing with what we used to do together.
Why do they need to be on the outside of your home, sir?
Well, I've run out of room on the interior.
Well, obviously. So we don't have a garage? We don't have a storage facility that we can put them in?
At this point in time, everything is exactly where I need it to be so I can access it. The stuff that's on the porch is what I call current information, which I need to stay abreast of as things are happening.
And so are you looking at these?
I am looking at every one of those. And if anything happens, a strong wind comes, I will be all over it. I will get it. I will bring it back. I'll put it exactly where it belongs.
How long have you lived in the neighborhood?
I've lived in that house for 38 years.
All right. And how long has it been since you started noticing documents and periodicals on the outside of the house?
4 years now.
All right. So your wife passed away 20 years ago.
Almost.
But for those first 16 years, according to your neighbor, you didn't have items outside of the house. What happened 4 years ago that caused you to now have to have things outside the home?
Being a librarian, I have a lot of...
Are you still working as a librarian?
No, I'm retired.
How long have you been retired?
I've been retired about 7 years.
7 years. So in those 7 years, oftentimes people like to define themselves by their occupation. But I'm still not getting the connection between your wife, who's passed away several years ago. You're no longer working as a librarian. So many things are digitized now. So information and things that you want to look at are available just with a click of a computer. Why is it that you are leaving these items basically subjecting them to all the elements? Wind, rain, these sorts of things are just a recipe for disaster in terms of insects. And so now you're impacting other people around you, sir.
Judge,
do you understand that?
Judge, I really have an issue with this computerized business. I've seen the computers coming into the libraries, and there could be, they can make copies, they can make 3,000 copies in a push of a button. They can make it disappear in the push of another button. There's really nothing that holds the written word anymore.
Okay.
And so I'm actually trying to keep something that will allow people to be able to turn a page. So that's the beauty of storage facilities, sir.
Pardon me? You have a storage facility where you can put it, you can keep it clean, you can put it in shelves, you can put it in bins, and that way you preserve these materials. Because I have some things that are just dear to me that I would not toss out. But you're living around other people.
Coming up on America's Court.
Do you think you have a problem with hoarding?
No,
items?
no. I've got a purpose.
So
why is your house so full that you can't?
I got this.
And later.
It could simply be solved by her just building a fence and doing her thing. It's not my responsibility what she sells her house for. It's got nothing to do with me.
We're back with the case of Amy Waters, who is suing Nelson Bauer for private nuisance.
Are you the only one complaining?
No, there's a handful of neighbors.
How many?
7 now. I think because my real estate agent suggested or said you're not going to sell the house until you drop it $30,000, and it's because of your neighbor, it's an eyesore. Neighbors started becoming more and more interested at their value.
Were you listing the house at $275,000?
Right, and that's what the appraisal was, right. And she's suggesting it be dropped $30,000 because nobody's buying. It's been over 15 months. We had one interested, and all the paperwork was signed. He backed out 2 weeks later, and he said, if you can get your neighbor on that hoarding show, maybe, you know, I'll reconsider, because he'd be getting some help.
Well, that's making him sound like a freak or something, like, oh, let's be entertained at his expense.
Or just try to offer him some kind of, because it can be treated, I believe.
Well, do you think that there's an issue with you in hoarding, sir?
Listen, real estate, there's a market.
But
whatever the market is and dictates to what you can sell your house for has nothing to do with me.
So you're talking anyway, and you're not listening to what my question was.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I need you to answer the question that I asked.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Do you think you have a problem with hoarding?
No,
items?
no. I've got a purpose.
So
why is your house so full that you can't?
I got this. If there is this level of items outside the house, what does the inside of your house look like?
It's pretty packed up.
All right. Define that for me.
We started in the library when my wife was alive, and we were starting to see the computerization of things happening, and we decided, look, let's start, you know, saving books that we thought were really special, and we're going to try to do something with them. And
you said you've been in the house for 38 years?
Yes.
And the whole time your wife was there up until 20 years ago?
Yes.
So that means for 18 years, your wife hasn't been there in the house with you.
Well.
And yet, as you were talking, the way that you were communicating to me suggested that you were still having this connection in terms of what your activities are now. But your wife hasn't been with you.
But she is.
No, listen, we all have people that we've lost. I get that. What I'm saying is, if you're there by yourself and your wife hasn't physically been there with you for the last 18 years, then this journey that you're on now really is more about you. Now, if you had said you just lost your wife 6 months ago, a year, and we were doing this together, then that would make more sense to me. But for the last 18 years, she has not had any sort of input in what you're doing. And if it's to this extent, I want you to be open to the possibility that maybe there's something else going on. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Coming up on America's Court with Judge Ross.
It could simply be solved by her just building a fence and doing her thing. It's not my responsibility what she sells her house for. It's got nothing to do with me.
We're back with the case of Amy Waters, who is suing Nelson Bauer for private nuisance.
You lived next door to him for how long?
7 years.
When you started, did you notice it before he started putting things on the outside?
Things on the lawn.
They would come and go, or?
Right, but nothing to this degree.
Okay.
You know, it started out slow.
Have you all had a good relationship otherwise?
He's very to himself.
Because librarians are really usually great neighbors to have. They're pretty kind of low-key. They tend to be more, you know, intellectual. And
Yeah, he doesn't socialize much. Building and safety was called. The neighbor group had that
who
called.
called building and safety?
One of the neighbors in about these 7 neighbors who are taking a concern called building and safety, and she was concerned about the fire hazard and are there other things in the house that could be dangerous. Building and safety came out and he slammed the door in their face, as he's done with us when we tried to.
Judge, there's no other people that are totally involved like she is.
Well,
she is the one that called
Well, I'm
building
trying to
safety,
sell my house.
not somebody else.
Well, let
She's
me ask
the
you
one.
this. In all the years that you've been there, in the 38 years, those 7 years, did you have any problems with her? Was there any sort of conflict?
She has been bombarding me, bothering me constantly. You know, she's on a mission. She wants to sell her house
So
for
she's
more
been
than the
doing
market
that
value.
since she has
and I'm
been
the
putting her
problem.
house on the market. But prior to that house being on the market.
Oh no! Before that, no.
Okay.
No.
So then your history with her suggests that she's been a good neighbor, but for the now trying to sell the house.
I wouldn't call her a good neighbor.
Okay,
a
what would you
neighbor.
call her?
I would call her a neighbor.
Okay. Was she a bad neighbor?
Well, she wasn't a great neighbor. I can
What would
tell.
define a great neighbor for you?
A great neighbor would be somebody who understands what's going on.
And I do.
Okay. So a great neighbor would let you do anything you wanted with your property.
If I am infringing...
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
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 And so wouldn't it be amazing if all of us had a great neighbor
That would
that
be
let
wonderful.
us do whatever we wanted with our property, and then they would do whatever they wanted with their property? But if you didn't like what they did with their property, then now they're not a great neighbor. Mr. Librarian, because you're a thinker. So you think about that, because really what we're dealing with here is if she can't sell her house, even if it's just, well, you know what, I know you're trying to sell your house right now. I'm going to take all these things, I'm going to put them in the backyard until you sell your house. See, to me, that's a great neighbor. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because if she's saying to you, I need your help, I'm trying to move. Can you help me out? Help a neighbor out.
You certainly don't let us do anything we would like to do.
Why can't you build a
So
fence?
no, you didn't answer that. Why haven't you said, you know what, I'm going to be a great neighbor and move these things so you can sell your house? And then once you sell them, I'll just put them back. Why not do that?
Everything is where it needs to be
Because
right
it's not
now in
about
order to
anybody
catalog
else
it and get
other
to.
than you.
Coming up on America's Court.
It could simply be solved by her just building a fence and doing her thing. It's not my responsibility what she sells her house for. It's got nothing to do with me.
We're back with the case of Amy Waters, who is suing Nelson Bauer for private nuisance.
Now, you don't want her to help you. Did you slam the door in the building and safety official that came out?
No, I just never answered it.
But you knew who it was.
Yes.
And they probably left notices.
And I know who sent them.
Okay, all right. So you don't think you have a problem. But if other people that are around you are saying maybe there's some issues that you're dealing with that you maybe don't want to deal with, but now it's time, are you open to receiving that help? You're stuck.
Stated like that, I would be wrong not to.
I got to just sit back for a second here. I think we had a little breakthrough just now.
But
Oh, so here we go.
Judge, there's
It came and it went.
there's two sides. There's two sides.
Yes.
It could simply be solved by her just building a fence and doing her thing. It's not my responsibility what she sells her house for. It's got nothing to do with me.
Yes.
I mean, the market is going to determine what she gets for her house, not me. So I have nothing.
Well, why did
Judge,
the
I would
buyer
rather
back
just
out?
be home. I don't want to be here. I just.
Stop. What did you just say?
I would just want to be home. I don't want to be here. Why am I being dragged here to have to deal with this?
Because what you're doing, sir, is you are creating what's called a private nuisance. You are interfering with the use, the rights, and enjoyment of another person. Your life and your lifestyle is impacting people around you.
Judge Ross's verdict when America's Court returns.
I know you all are from Delaware, which is why you're able to sue for $15,000. And based on the evidence and the testimony before this court, the gavel is going to come down in favor of the defendant. Because he is a learned man. And one of the things he talked about was that I don't have any documentation showing that there were offers made and rejected. I don't have any sense of what other homes are selling for in terms of getting some sort of idea as to what the market's going for. In some communities, the market's doing really well. In other communities, home prices are having to dip.
It would have been helpful if I had the real estate agent here with me.
Absolutely. Because all I know is that you're saying, I'm not getting the price that I want. Well, most people can say that about when they own a home. They don't usually get what they want unless the market's hot. So the very thing that he pointed out is the very thing that you can't prove. Unfortunately, your matter's dismissed. Sir, you think about what I said.
Thank you, Judge.
Case closed.
All rise.
Judge Ross has ruled in favor of the defendant. The plaintiff's claim is denied.
I'm not happy with the ruling. I hope Mr. Bauer will take some of the suggestions the judge had to offer.
I'm greatly relieved that I won, but the judge gave me a lot to think about.